Hey everyone, I've returned. I'm still sick, but the flu's been downgraded to a sore throat, so I'll just need to make sure I'm drinking plenty of water on this one. I also started playing Outer Wilds for the first time on Friday as my dizziness subsided, and that game stole 7 hours of my life. Great game, but it slowed me down a little. So in this episode, we're going to be wrapping up the Forest of Death. I've touched on almost all the major points I've wanted to, and I'll be able to finish that up today. As I've explained before, though the story itself has changed, I'm trying to keep the setting as near as possible to canon. So following the Forest of Death, we're going to have a short prelude to Phase 3, and then have our final tournament between the better Genin. After that in canon, we had the Tsunade search arc, and well, I already have all 3 Sannin in the village, so we'll be exploring something a little bit different. While I don't want to spell out my plans for everyone, I equally want it to be known that I'm following the same arc beats as in canon. So what's to come should be halfway easy to predict. Anyway, on with the show. Kiba, Ino, and Lee are casually making their way toward the tower, having no way of otherwise finding a Hell Scroll. They were told there'd be more than enough, but with absolutely no help in finding them, the team just can't figure out how to proceed. With Kiba's sensory abilities, they've been smartly avoiding conflict, passing nearby teams unnoticed. But on the single occasion where they did take a Hell Scroll from a team that had lost their original scroll already, their opponent set fire to the scroll and burned it up. Besides this one speed bump, they're all in good shape and making good time. In their travels, they also came across a defeated group with their Heaven Scroll sitting free from anyone's pack. There were no traps or challenges around the scroll, so the team took it as an additional bargaining chip if they came across a team too strong. From the exam's beginning, they would travel for nearly 2 days unperturbed, until Kiba at last smells something nearby. When Ino asks what it is, he says that it smells like blood. Lee wonders if they've wandered close to another finished fight. Kiba shakes his head and says it smells like blood, not that it is blood. Confused, Ino tells him to clarify, and Kiba tells them that the Uchihas smell like blood, but he's not smelling their blood, specifically. Eyes lighting up that Sasuke could be nearby, Ino directs Kiba to show them where the scent's from. Lee stops them both and says they shouldn't approach every single scene of carnage, just in case it is a trap. Ino agrees after a moment and changes her orders to Kiba to not hurt Sasuke when he goes over there. Don't even try to. Staring blankly at Ino, Kiba asks her what he's supposed to do if people attack him. She tells him he can defend himself, but because of the mystery of the situation and that Sasuke might be over there, he can't be the attacker. He must be passive-defensive. Grudgingly agreeing, Kiba tells them to stay down as he dashes into the brush. He's only in the thick bushes for 20 minutes before emerging on its other side to an extinguished campfire. Around the smoking campsite are who he expected, Sasuke, Neji, and Shikamaru. Around them are 3 other defeated Leaf Shinobi that he's unfamiliar with. With the extra Heaven Scroll in his pack, Kiba raises his hands with a smirk. He tells them that he's just investigating who was nearby, but since they're both from the same class, they can just part ways and never speak of this again. As he tries to take a step back, Sasuke dashes around his flank to cut off his escape. None of Team 7 speak to him as they slowly move to surround him. He tells them that they can beat him up if they want to, or they can have the Heaven Scroll that he has in his pack. He wonders why he blindly dashed into the opening. Why didn't he stop? Carefully pulling out the Heaven Scroll and presenting it to them, Kiba's eye begins to twitch. He's irritated by the submissive form he's taking. Throwing it to Sasuke, who sidesteps and lets it fall to the ground, Kiba instantly shifts from playing nice to suspicious. If they're not flanking him for the scroll, why else are they trying to take him out? He tries telling them that he has nothing else. He doesn't have food on him, or water, or any kind of scroll past the one he just tossed. From his peripheral vision, Kiba sees one of Shikamaru's shadowy tendrils snaking toward him. Hopping over it, he intends to land on Sasuke's other side, but Sasuke intercepts him in midair. Caught off guard, he still manages to trade a couple strikes before landing back down. Shikamaru's shadow is almost upon him, and he's forced to take several evasive steps whilst also defending against Sasuke. As he makes one successful strike, Neji hits him in the side and knocks the wind out of him. Spluttering and wheezing, he loses track for just a second, and Shikamaru's shadow catches him. As he looks up at his 3 opponents, Sasuke performs a fireball jutsu. The fire overtakes him, and he's suddenly standing unharmed beside Ino and Lee. Ino's looking at him like he's gone deaf and asks whether he's going to scout the team he just smelled out. While he tries to comprehend what just happened, his short-term memory quickly fades away. Renewed clarity from Ino's berating, Kiba charges into the woods to scout the team. Emerging on the bush's other side, he beholds Team 7 at a campfire, standing over a freshly beaten team. Something about the situation feels familiar, but Kiba needs to focus on the now. Ino made him promise to not do anything aggressive, so he tries to offer up his Heaven Scroll. Team 7 is unamused and attacks him anyway. Eventually overwhelmed, Kiba's taken out by a fireball and simultaneously finds himself standing beside Ino and Lee. Ino's looking at him as if he's an idiot, and asks him if he's going to scout that team in the bushes. "Oh yeah, that team he just smelled like blood, that's right. It might be their fellow classmates, he shouldn't take an aggressive approach." "Oh, it is Sasuke. They don't want the Heaven Scroll? They're all attacking at the same time?" Overwhelmed, Kiba flinches and finds Ino staring at him in disbelief that he won't go scout this team out. His deja vu doesn't fade so fast, and he tells her that he just did that, it didn't work out so well. Confused, Ino tells him that he just told them that he smelled them. She tells him to stop being a fool and go scout. Sneaking into the bushes, Kiba feels this heavy familiarity, as if he's passed through this stretch of bushes dozens of times. He hears a fire nearby and sneaks to the edge of the bushes to peer unseen. Perhaps 6 feet in front of him, Sasuke is standing with his back turned. His other teammates are more than 30 feet away, talking beside a fire. A reminder passes through his head to not take offensive action, but he doesn't recall who told him that. Forgetting the advice, he bursts from the bushes with fangs bared and lands a lethal surprise strike on Sasuke. Blinking, Kiba finds himself looking up at Ino and Lee. They tell him that he just suddenly passed out, and when he asked for how long, just about 3 hours. He definitely feels mentally exhausted, but remembers more clearly than ever now the repeated exercise he was put through. He wonders if there was a moral lesson from that challenge, or if it was simply a puzzle to figure out. Or perhaps it was all simply in his head and somehow the forest had gotten to him. But before that, he's laying on lumpy ground with one particular rock sticking right in his back. Grumbling, Kiba shifts and pulls the rock out from under him. Except it's not a rock, it's a Hell Scroll. It's dawn now on the 3rd day as someone stumbles out of the woods at the base of the tower. They're struggling slowly toward the nearest door they can see. As we come in close, it becomes clearly Naruto. Collapsing just feet from the door, he passes out and releases the 2 girls on his back. As they fall free, they're jostled awake. Tenten is only plagued in her mind as she sits up and mutely looks down at Naruto. Hinata, on the other hand, has realized how far he's come with them on his back, but she's too injured still to pull him to the tower door. She calls for Tenten, barely with the strength to stay conscious, and pleads for help. Lazily, Tenten walks to Hinata and grabs one of Naruto's hands to drag him to the door. The door clicks as they touch it and swings open. Barely making it inside, all 3 collapse. The 3 scrolls in Naruto's pack begin vibrating before bursting in a big cloud of smoke. Standing before them is... It's noon, now on the 5th and final day. Team 7 are still hunting for their Heaven Scroll. They're all exhausted, having been through over a dozen fights with other teams already. They're lucky to have gotten even a couple hours shut-eye each night without being jumped by another team. Constantly on alert and constantly failing to get their 3rd scroll, time has run out. They've decided to camp at the tower's edge and just peck off whatever teams are nearby. They're all sporting injuries, and not since Phase 2's beginning has any one of their chakra pools been fully replenished. They're constantly fighting on half a tank. Intercepting a group of Leaf Ninja, they're so tired of this phase that there's no talk or banter. Sasuke and Neji are both on the instant defensive and weave between their also tired foes in as short a time as possible. A few chakra points deactivated on each ninja cripples them enough that even Shikamaru's subpar taijutsu can easily outmaneuver them. A gong suddenly sounds from the tower as Anko's voice announces there's just 30 minutes left on the phase. Both teams turn as vicious as possible toward one another. Sasuke pegs one ninja against a tree and searches his pack for scrolls instead of knocking him out. Though the ninja pushes him away, he manages to grab one scroll. a hell scroll. He looks at the scroll with disappointment, and as he's about to toss it away, it goes up in flames. Once a hell scroll is claimed by a team, it will burn up in anyone else's hands. That's why there's more hell scrolls than there are teams. Sakura, Choji, and Shino are jumping from tree to tree. It's the very last day and they still haven't found a hell scroll. They've decided to ditch caution for their urgency. Before they know it, they've reached the tower. Deciding to expand from that point, they begin a desperate search. But finally, Shino finds one resting at the base of a tree, seemingly untouched. Around this hell scroll, about 10 feet apart from one another, are 3 kunai stuck into the tree. Sakura reminds the other two that hell scrolls are probably called such for some sort of trick. Choji agrees and asks how they should approach it. Shino does a quick check with his bugs to make sure there aren't any traps, and there don't appear to be any. Sakura then says the best way to test the waters is to simply wade in. Volunteering for the task, she carefully walks toward the scroll. Billowing around her, a sudden genjutsu like a flower closing into a bulb envelops Sakura. Sakura feels odd. Though she can visually tell what's happening to her, she just instinctively knows that she's in a genjutsu. She hasn't been tricked. When Neji Hyuga appears before her with his all-seeing Byakugan, Sakura notes how poor the details are. The wrappings he usually has on his right arm and leg are oddly on his left. If this genjutsu were taking advantage of her memory, then it was doing a poor job. She doesn't even know Neji that well, but still remembers such a detail. Wondering how she can disrupt the genjutsu, Sakura forms several hand seals while humming dulcet tones. Finishing her own genjutsu, Sakura claps her hands loudly together. Not only does her genjutsu hide her presence, augmented both visually and aurally, but it also spikes out offensively with her clap. Like poking holes in a parachute, her genjutsu pierces the foreign genjutsu and it begins to deflate and fall apart. As the genjutsu disarms, Sakura releases her own and runs to the hell scroll before cheering to the other two in celebration. Luckily for them, their resident genjutsu expert took the challenge and crushed it. However, the hell scroll has a barrier around it. They surmise that all 3 kunai need to be removed at once, so Sakura invites them over. Shino tells Choji to wait just in case the genjutsu pops out again. It might be layered like a trap, but subtle enough to not be detected as such. Sure enough, as Shino approaches Sakura, a genjutsu floats down over him and cuts him off from his allies. This time, Rock Lee appears before him. Shino is totally tricked by the genjutsu, despite expecting it, and conjures his bees in anticipation for trying out their utility. Sakura tries calling to him that it's fake, but he can't hear her. Lee outstrips Shino's bugs for speed easily, and though his punches aren't leaving any real impact, Shino's increasingly convinced that he's being pulverized. At first, he seeks to tuck into a ball and become defensive. For someone as talented as Lee, Shino realizes that he should have been beaten to a pulp by now. Closing off Lee from his senses, Shino reaches out to his sensor bugs and notices the veil of chakra pulled down around him. Right, a genjutsu. How could he even forget that? Remembering where he is, Shino straightens, looks through the elusive Lee, and adds Sakura. His bugs purge the genjutsu from his system and dispels around him as he walks toward her, like cool guys walking away from explosions. He shakes his head and tells Sakura that her genjutsu is even better than whatever the hell scroll is doing to them. Grinning proudly at him, she reassures Shino that if he sticks by her side for long enough, he'll soon learn to not be tricked by genjutsu at all. Recognizing the inevitable, they call to Choji that he'll have to endure some sort of illusion to get to them. The moment Choji emerges from the bushes, he stops and like a wall, the genjutsu appears all around him, boxing him in. Surrounded quickly, Choji watches as strangers, friends, and even family all fall in front of him. He buckles at the knees, and tears begin to stream down his face. Sakura and Shino try to cheer him on, but Choji can't hear anything beyond the terror around him. Nearby, they hear Anko's voice from the tower announcing just 30 minutes left on the competition. Shino tries to step towards Choji to help him out of the illusion, but Sakura stops him. She tells him that the next time the 3 of them are in battle, Choji needs to be reliable. And he'll never be reliable for as long as he allows this fear to haunt him. It's cruel now, and maybe they're monsters for just watching, but he needs to get past this. They're ninja. Death is not a concept that should be alien to them. Shino shakes his head and tells her no. You can't give everyone the same cold treatment and expect equal results. Choji doesn't need courage, he needs hope, and they need to give that to him. From their outside vantage point, they can see what's happening, but they can't hear what Choji hears. Crying, screaming, bloodletting carnage. Closing his eyes isn't doing anything, as Choji can't unsee any of it. As the bodies pile up around him, he starts hearing familiar voices. His father, Choza, crying out for his help. His childhood friend, Shikamaru, shouting for him. His teammate, Shino, gasping for aid. Teeth chattering, Choji tries to call for courage, but reaches only an empty void. Terrified at finding nothing, Choji retreats back to his fear. Soon, Ino and Sakura are amongst the fallen, also crying out for his help. The longer he waits in his fear, the worse it gets. Trying again, Choji reaches inward for the courage that he needs, and yet again, there's an absence on the other side. As fear is replaced with panicked desperation, a hand juts in from nowhere, belonging to nobody. Shino's face appears from nothingness and he tells Choji, "We're here for you, buddy. Grab my hand." All other resources spent, Choji reaches for Shino's hand, and the illusion around them dissipates. "Forget courage," Shino tells him, as Sakura dispels the genjutsu completely. "But keep your hope. Fight with that instead. With courage, you fight alone. With hope, we fight together. And it's a collective fight, not a solo one. No matter where you end up, I will always be trying to help." "We will," Sakura adds, giving Choji a confident smile. Pulling the three kunai out at once releases the barrier, and all three turn to the tower as the final minutes tick away. Choji smiles for their aid, reassured that even in the darkest hour they'll always be trying to help. But he still wonders what would have happened had he reached into the void and decided to just stay there. And that's the end for today. I wanted to touch on everyone and give most of them a proper conclusion. We'll be inside the tower next time and find out just how well and how poorly all of the teams did. The Forest of Death is technically over. I'd call the tower part the phase 2.5 portion. We won't spend very long there, though there's lots to cover. Next episode will be the last before the new year, so it might be a simple one. And then I'm going to try to make a huge episode for January 1st that'll round out phase 2.5 completely. Until then, the sky's the limit.